Hello and welcome to the Viktor Frankl Meaning Academy podcast. I am your host, one of your hosts, Dr. Daniel A. Franz, more casually known as Dr. Dan, with my good friend, colleague, and cohort, Rabbi Dr. B. Halevi. Good listener, I'll have you know this. I've been working with B for 2 years now. And we all thought, for those of you that listened for a long time and watched on YouTube, you would think B stood for Baruch. But if you look today, hop on YouTube, check it out. B, my friends, actually stands for Dr. Rabbi Babyface Halevi. You've got to see this face. I mean, B, you went to San Diego last week. You come back looking 10 years younger. Apparently, the Cali sun did something for you.
My kid just told me that the B stands for big nose because he hadn't seen it since I shaved. And he told me, you need to grow that thing back. So, I'm getting mixed messages here, Brother Dan.
Mixed messages. Why? Well, because the kid says grow it back, and I'm saying baby face is looking good on you. Here, I put a sweatshirt on today just to try to look a little bit younger, but with the gray beard, I'm feeling 10 years older. So,
Well, honestly, that's probably a segue. After going to San Diego and basking in the beautiful sun, I come back here to Denver, Colorado, and there's beautiful sun, but damn, it's cold and it feels like January is dragging on.
I feel you. I felt that. I'm feeling that, and I talked to a lot of clients about that. Right, like January in the Midwest, much like Denver, is gray, wet, rainy. I was driving in the Chicagoland area over the weekend, and I was reminded the area I grew up in. I'm like, man, I forgot how much I hate, like literally hate January because it's not just white snow, but it's that dirty white snow. Most of it by then, as you're traveling, is gray and black, and it's gross, and we're all feeling it. And then you take that and you add it to life, right? Life comes at you, and it's a recipe. Some days, I don't know about you, bud, but some days it's hard to go on, man. I just feel like, what's the flipping point? And that's I'm a logotherapist. I can't feel that way.
Well, not to go too dark too quickly. Usually we talk about your, cardigan sweaters and fun things to get rolling. But since you're not wearing one, and we're talking about sort of the seasonal affective disorder, I think of the words of Viktor Frankl, who probably didn't win any friends and influence people with this question he would ask, but he would start out his conversations with his patients saying, "Why have you not killed yourself?"
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that is like jarring. I can imagine a bunch of interns doing their medical internship as psychiatrists and being shocked and horrified that Dr. Frankel could ask such a thing, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
not in the DSM manual behind us. So what was he asking? What was he getting at? Was he just the buzzkill, or was there a method to the madness of that question?
Well, of course there was a method, right? He is trying to shock us into awareness of, well, why haven't you? Why are you going on? What keeps you going? And I mean, look, in January where you and I live, some days it's hard to find some good things there. Yeah, you got to dig deep some days, but some days you just might be too tired to dig deep and feel like, ugh, why? Why haven't I? Right? Well, there's a lot of good reasons, right? That's a good question to go with. But I think that's a deep, dark question. What about just days when you're like, ugh, I don't want to do anything?
Well, it's not, though it's not deep and dark, or maybe it's deep, but it's not dark because if you think about it, he's not suggesting, hey, like I can't help you. Good luck.
Right.
What he's saying is, you're here. That much I know. That's all I know about you. You're still alive. You have luckily stayed alive, and you have chosen to stay alive. So tell me about that, because there must be something there we can build on. And then, so that isn't dark. That is actually positive psychology. That's find the gratitude stepping stones, and step and step and step and step. And I guess, that's what I'm hearing in our conversation when I'm looking out the kind of dreary window, right? Find the stepping stone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So, last week I reported on the Meaning Project podcast that, I was in some dark times, some difficult times, and I mean, with you being gone, I mean, how much more dark could my life get? Um, and it was interesting. Like the thing for me, and this is, right out of logotherapy and Dr. Frankel's work, going to work and helping people, right? And again, you and I have talked about this many times before. We are blessed that our job is about helping people, but the point being, uh, when you're in your dark times, reaching out to help others can certainly help you.
That's why I do believe Dr. Frankl called it height psychology, is in sort of contradistinction to Jungian depth psychology. Look, I like diving deep into the darkness and getting in the shadows and all of that stuff. But I do believe that if there is an inspirational form of psychology or psychotherapy out there, it is Franklinian, it is logotherapy, it is this work we do. I see, why he would want to lift somebody's sights, because we naturally can kind of dig into some of the shadows and the darkness. We need help sort of lifting our gaze, especially when it's dreary outside.
Yeah, I think I've shared. I'm preparing to do some courses in Jungian study, and I tell you what, man, just looking at some of the images for the covers of the courses, man, that's some dark stuff. But when we talk about Frankl and we talk about height psychology, something you brought up, stepping stones, right? Find the stepping stones. Why haven't you committed suicide yet? Okay, what are some of those stepping stones? We talked about self-transcendence, helping people. What else can you do in these days when you feel like this?
Well, again, I do think self-transcendence is even bigger than helping people. I see it with, as I work in the Enneagram, and certain Enneagram types are self-referencing. They're natural. It's not bad. It's not that they're selfish, just that their natural movement is inwards, right? And they have to force themselves to go outwards. That can be just as simple as literally going outside. Like, I work with some people, Enneagram 5s and other withdrawing types, and everything around you in the winter says hibernate, pull back, disappear. So just getting out of the house, right? That can be an act of literally of self-transcendence. So yeah, it can be volunteering at your, local, whatever, humane society, but it can also just be literally going outside.
Yeah, and we talk about that a lot. Getting outside, getting into nature can be good for you. Just getting out of the house, getting out of the environment that you're in on a day-to-day basis can be very empowering. But then even choosing to do something enjoyable with that time, right? That can be a great stepping stone to get out and to get away and to get a change of scenery can be very empowering.
So it's about, the energy. For me, I see things in terms of energy, and it's this energy of winters. Everything is pulling you inside, and that dormant, and honoring it. I got to think there's a beautiful piece of honoring being quiet and contemplative and sitting by the fire and writing, but then also defying it, right? That's that defiant spirit, and really just being honest about it's a slippery slope too. Like, you can talk yourself into anything, and no, it's time for me to be more contemplative and not go to that party and not go do that thing that I was invited to do. And so really challenging yourself, is this dormant and has a purpose, or am I withdrawing and am I hiding? And so really being honest about where you are right now.
Okay. So that covers the hibernation feeling of January in the Midwest and in the mountain region. But what about just when you feel like life is piling up on you and you just can't take anymore?
Well, it was Dr. Frankl talks about in one of his books, I lived in Israel for a long time, and there you see lots of arches, Roman arches. And when the arches are starting to deteriorate, you would think, there's no salvaging them. But what he says is, and what they do is they put more weight on the arch because they need it to strengthen by that burden, right? That's how you reinforce the arch. And I think that's what we're talking about here, right? Reframing your arch, not as these things are a distraction or a deterrent. These are actually, in some ways, blessings. And that's going to sound rough if somebody's saying, hey, man, I got a lot of burden. So
Yeah.
how is it a blessing, Dr. D?
Hey, man, I'm asking you because there are days I just feel like I've had my fill, man. Too much going on. And you're saying, all right, so you feel like you got too much going on. You feel like there's a lot of burden going on, and you want me to take on more, B? I've got some words I could say to you that would cause us to hit the explicit button when we put this on YouTube, but I don't want any more burden. Are you kidding me?
Well, when I used to visit, when I was a rabbi and I used to make my rounds at nursing homes, I would see that these are people who needed more burden on their arch.
Mm.
Sitting in front of a TV for 8 hours watching Matlock is not a burden, a blessing with absence of burdens, right? So be careful what you wish for. Now, I'm not saying that we can handle everything, and there are times when it's too much, but maybe it's just about reframing the burden.
I love that idea of reframing the burden, right? Looking at, hey, sometimes what we consider to be burdens, other people would consider to be blessings, right? That, we've talked before that we truly live in the 1% of the world, and that these struggles we have can often, if we reframe them in that, sense, like, yeah, we're doing okay. It's not so bad.
Yeah, and also it gives us some structure. When I have an entire day in front of me to write, I love to write. It's hard to write. When I have 2 hours in the morning from 5 to 7 and the clock is ticking, I write like the wind.
Hmm.
So that burden isn't necessarily an obstacle to your creative expression, right? In some ways, it gives you that needed constraint to find that expression.
Well, and I would even offer, if we look at the MBTI, you would definitely be an MBTI P at the end there, your fourth letter in, liking options. And P often is associated with, we don't like using the word procrastination, but it is somebody that gets that energy of the last minute, right? Like if you only have a finite amount of time, man, there's that pressure to get it done. Where those of us that like to take our time and plan a little bit more, the J's in the group, like, yeah, we don't want that energy. But I can relate to you in some ways that, yeah, if the idea that Frankel tells us, this goes back to the idea of the tragic triad: pain, guilt, and death. When we recognize we have a finite amount of time in our day and in our lives, it really does force us to step back and reframe and be like, man, I got to get something done here. There's a unique task life is asking me to complete, and I got to get on it.
So really, it's about reframing the burden, because when I work with especially guys who are single, I don't care what age they are. One of the challenges they have is they don't have enough burden in their life. They have too much me time. And so one of the first things I'll insist that they do is find a you time, a they time, somebody else's time. I just talked to the guy who's now going to start walking dogs at the Humane Society, um, visiting people in the nursing home, like I mentioned before, whatever it is, because if you have all of that time or all of that self, it's really hard to find that creative tension. And that's the part of that self transcendence. Get beyond yourself, give some of yourself away. Now you got to be careful with that, but still, I think that that's a very important piece of defying some of this darkness.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, self transcendence can be as simple as helping, but as Dr. Frankel tells us, it really is, like you said, giving yourself over to something or somebody greater than yourself, right? A cause, a person. And when you're single, you may not have that person, that one person you want to give yourself to, but you can certainly find people that you can give yourself to, causes that you can give yourself to. Dog walking.
I was just listening, or no, I was on a podcast or I was reading a book, but it was about a guy who's just made a ton of money. He's super successful. He's the CEO. Like he's just at the top of his world and he's not finding a lot of meaning. And he was at the grocery store and this little old lady asks if he could help her find something. And, he wasn't sure if he thought he looked like he worked there or not. And his first reaction was, I'm a CEO of a company. Like blah, blah, blah. And he decided he's going to put that ego aside and he's just going to help. And he spent like 10 minutes, I don't know, finding the buttermilk biscuit, box at the top of the third aisle down the row. Anyways, it took him a long time. And he said at the end of the week, that was the highlight of his week.
Mm-hmm.
After a power week of, doing deals and bossing people around, that was the highlight of his week. And I thought, there it is. Self-transcendence.
It's interesting. I have a very similar story of a client, probably 10 years ago, I worked with very intensely, who still comes back occasionally. Had really done it in business, did well, was achieving and felt good about where his business was. So good that the business didn't really need him anymore, right? He had hired the right people, put the right people in place, and he could just sit back and watch it work and do well. His kids were all grown up and vastly successful, doing great things in different ways. One, an achieved architect and engineer, another just a great creative, and everything was great except it was boring. He had nothing more to do. And unfortunately for him, that's when he found alcohol. And for the first time, he had found alcohol at maybe 55 years old, and he found it hard. We're talking a half gallon of vodka and a half gallon of 150 proof Bacardi rum every weekend. And then it got to be bad. And then when he realized, wow, I need something to do, I need a cause to give myself over to, it's been amazing to watch people he's helped with his experience and his resources and things like that. And it's not a gallon of alcohol every weekend anymore.
Yeah, a teacher of mine called that the void dance, avoidance, a void dance, a dance around the void. And I feel like that's, if you look outside and it's gray, or you look at your life, your kids are gone, they're empty nest, or whatever it might be. It's the void dance, as opposed to stopping the void dance, stopping avoiding it, right? And just go into it, face it, look at it. That's Jungian, that's depth psychology.
Dude, did you just play a word trick on us? Avoid dance. I love that. That's got to be some kind of art there, man. Like, I know we didn't get what is the Latin root of avoidance or avoid? Yeah, no, I like that's really cool. Avoid dance. Yeah. And I think in our time today, we can find so many voids, so many existential vacuums to engage in when we're feeling overwhelmed, when we're feeling meaningless. And the trick is to recognize that avoidance, that void, and like you said, find a way out. Nature abhors a vacuum. How do we fill that? What do we do that? We can fill it with more thumb exercises on the phone and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, or we can do something meaningful.
Well, this is why the weekends, in our culture are so hard sometimes. If you don't have the dancing, right? If you don't have the doing, if you don't you just recreate the weekday during the weekend of doing. I do. I got to be very mindful not to do the dance of the void.
How do you do that? So let's talk more stepping stones. How are you mindful not to turn your weekend into a weekday?
I used to have it built in when I was observant and had the Sabbath Shabbat, because we wouldn't use technology. We wouldn't use the phone. I don't have that anymore. But what I do have is my ability to choose some of that. So I'll put down my phone or my computer for chunks of time on the weekend, which does not happen during the weekdays. And I'll force myself not to produce, not to create, it's my dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And yeah, it's constructive. I'm not drinking a half, gallon of Bacardi, but it's still destructive. My wife will tell me when she sees me doing the void dance and my, laptop, she'll just walk over and she'll slam the laptop shut and say, "You're doing the fucking void dance. Stop it." Right.
And I have met your lovely wife, and that is a powerful woman. I would be terrified for her to slam my. How many laptops you go through in a year, bud?
It's my fingertips you got to worry about. I'm still piping, man.
So again, though, for our faithful listeners out there, what are the stepping stones that you use to fill the void?
Is this rhetorical, or are we waiting for them?
No, man, I'm putting that one on you because I mean, I'll be honest. I said it last week, and things aren't great this week. I've got some things lined up. The weekend's ahead of us. I'll find some things to pull myself out of my avoid dance, but and I'll share some of that. But what about you? How do you, if you're not creating amazing stuff for the Defiant Spirit and the Viktor Frankl Media Academy, what are you doing?
For 25 years, I've been trying to meditate. That's why they call it a practice, because I am so far from mastery. I'm still such a novice practicing. It is the most humbling experience to get up and go sit again on the couch, trying to quiet my noisy mind. It's like every day it's the same thing. Can I get 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes of just quiet? And so that is my number one way of dealing with my dance.
As we said a few weeks ago, if J.J. McCarthy can do it, surely you can. If he can do it in the stadium. But I had the opportunity Fans of all of our shows know that we are huge fans of Ted Lasso. I had the opportunity to go see Roy Kent himself last weekend with my wife. Brett Goldstein performed, and that's exactly what he said. He said, when things get tough, I'm really trying to do things better and do things healthier. He's had this massive success with the Ted Lasso show. And he said, he's picked up the practice of meditation. And he said, if by meditation you mean spending 20 minutes quietly reminding yourself of all the horrible things you've done in the past week and what you failed at and why you aren't worth anything, he said, yeah, I've got that mastered. And I think that's for so many of us. We can spend that time rehashing, man, I should have done this better. I feel guilty about this. But it really is a practice of goodness and maybe even true silence to allow the mind to rest.
Yeah, and it was Blaise Pascal who said all of a man's problems could be solved if he could learn to sit quietly in an empty chamber, right? And that's work of a lifetime. So
Absolutely. I mean, we pay big monies in different places throughout the country to go to truly quiet rooms. What are they? The sensory deprivation tanks of salt water and no sound and no light. And people freak the hell out in these things, man. We are not good at silence and darkness, but we need to get better at it.
what about you? What are some of the things you do to stop doing the void dance?
Oh man, I don't know, dude. I don't even want to do it right now, but I know I need to. Right? That's just kind of where I am. Like I said, I go and I work. I see people and I help people, but that, as you said, I recognize that that's a void dance for me. It's helpful. It gets my mind off what's going on here.
Well, it's also a dangerous drug of choice because people reward that drug.
Yeah, yeah. There's some good positives there, and I make a couple bucks doing it. So yeah, I can't keep doing that, right? Because then as a psychotherapist, that's a recipe for burnout. What do I do? You know what? I'm going to go out for a nice meal tonight. I'm going to see my brother and sister and their wives and my dad, and we missed each other over the holidays. Just going to go relax and have a nice meal. I think there may actually be a massage on the calendar sometime in the next week or so. That's good. That is something I've taken more seriously towards the end of last year when injury was slowing me down. My physician said, "Why don't you try to massage?" I'm like, "Whatever." And the massage therapist, as she was digging into my neck, was like, "Wow. Been a while since you've done something like this." I'm like, "Why?" She goes, "Well, that's kind of like steel. That should not be that way." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You're a little tense." So yeah, I've been doing that more regularly. The kids are gone, so we do have an empty nest. So it gives the lovely Mrs. Dr. Dan and I an opportunity to spend some quality time together, and just figuring out what that means.
Here's a tool that's awesome. Here's a tool that I have literally in my pockets right now. I carry these around sometimes. It comes from an ancient Kabbalistic teaching, but you carry two pieces of paper in your pocket, and one says, "The whole world was created just for me." It's an ancient text. And the other one says, "I am but ashes and dust." And Golda Meir, former prime minister of Israel, said she used to carry these around with her because it would remind her that, on the one hand, we have power and we need to exercise it and do and accomplish and achieve. And on the other hand, we are but ashes and dust, humility, right?
Yeah.
And so trying to kind of regulate my dancing with this practice. And there's lots of practices like this.
Well, and I think also the ashes and dust is a reminder of life's transitoriness, and that, even when we're struggling, when we're suffering, when we're feeling low, like there's a task out there for us to accomplish before the time's up.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So we started out with talking about sort of the dreary weather and how it affects us, and then we went into the fact that we haven't killed ourselves, and then we dug out of that dark, deep hole, as Dr. Frankel would want us to get to the mountaintop, right, of height psychology, of seeing the possibility and having tools and strategies and techniques to to persevere, to push on.
Absolutely. And I would offer this, right? For those of you out there who are taking some solace in our recommendations, great. For those of you that feel like you've got it and you're doing well in this time in life, hey, Connect with us on Facebook at the Viktor Frankl Meaning Academy. Send one of us an email. Let us know what you're doing. How do you, pull yourself out? How do you climb the mountain to that height?
Dude, I just gave you a softball, and I thought you were going to actually hit it out of the park. That was like a nice double, but I was setting you up to tell us about your search for meaning and how we can keep this perseverance going.
B, I was going to go into that, but I have done that so many times for us. I figured it was your time, man. You have been, look, we've all been a huge driving creative force in this, but, shine for a minute, brothers. Tell us what about your search for meaning.
Well, we are launching it. As you're listening to this, it'll probably be pretty close to the time, sometime in February. What's the official launch date?
Early February.
February 7th?
Our first group, you can get on at any time right now. We have content available for you, but our first meeting is Wednesday, February 7th, noon Eastern. We'll have our first gathering of meaning seekers along with the three of us, B, myself, and Elise.
So your search for meaning takes Dr. Frankl's seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, and sort of breaks it down into not only a curriculum, but building on that through real life experiences and tools that you can use to do this work, to go up, to ascend the mountain, to discover your search, your meaning, and do it in the context of a supportive group of, as Dr. Dan said, meaning seekers. And so we have curriculum online to support you doing your work, workbooks and whatnot. And then we have a gathering of meaning seekers, as Dan said, every other week, once during the day, once in the evening, for us to support each other on the journey.
As well as a beautifully crafted community site. I don't even know what to call it. Much similar to a private Facebook group, but so much nicer and more robust and things to do there, complete with an app. We were just talking about it yesterday. This is a great opportunity to be social, but not in the usual social media platforms, right? It's an opportunity to focus just on meaning and this group of meaning seekers. You get your own separate app, your own separate site that we go to on Thinkific to connect, to interact, and just to support each other, not confused with all the advertisements and frustrations and other stuff you may get on a Facebook page.
Yeah, when we ran a pilot of this a few months back, one of the things I heard over and over again was it was refreshing just to get onto a call or be in a group of people who were having real conversations that weren't, just presenting shiny Facebook polished versions of themselves, but digging deep.
Yeah, so true. And I think the cool thing was, like, we were all committed to being on there wherever we were, whenever the time was. And, there were times I was here in the Dr. Dan studios. There were times I was on the road places. I remember, I think you tried to pop in from a mountain once, and, we got you in there for a while. So, and we're going to continue that kind of tradition of being present and being with you. And hopefully, as a participant, you'll join us in that.
And we've lowered the bar of entry. So it's just a very clear bar of entry. It's $50 a month for now, for a limited time, where you can just go month to month to be a part of this community. The first, I think 14 days are even complimentary, so you can check it out and get a feel for it and get to meet some of your fellow meaning seekers. But the bottom line is we just want to build community, and we want to build it with you. If you're listening to this, you are part of our community already, so make it formal and join Meaning Seekers. You can jump over to themeaningacademy.com. You can find it pretty easily, the program page, your search for meaning, and everything you want to know is there.
Yep. And if you have any issues finding it, please certainly contact either B or I or Dr. Elise. We are all available on the meaningacademy.com page. And we certainly look forward to working with you and interacting and chatting and supporting you in your search for meaning, starting in just a few weeks.
And our number one fan, the Running Man, asked us to keep it to 30 minutes because that's his jogging cycle. And we are now at 29 minutes and 40 seconds, Running Man. You're welcome.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening. As always, get out there and live your life with meaning, purpose, and resilience. Take care.
Take care.